July 27th, 2023, and the time is 5:33 p.m. Linda, if you could do the roll call, please.
Okay, I'm going to start with Mike Hardy.
Here.
I have an old sheet, so I'm sure I will do this wrong. Hold on, give me 1 second here. Mayor Keith,
Here.
Stacy Rizzo,
Here.
Susan Gravellisi,
Here.
Dr. Kelly,
Here.
Carl Svensson,
Here.
and I know Chris Bowen is absent. And I'm going to go on to Joanne McKenna.
Here.
Rich Biscay,
Here.
Don Sermella. Note is absent. Nick Rystrom,
Here.
you, and Jerry Visconti. Noted as absent. And that is it for roll call. I am going to share my screen. Get my computer to work with me. And we're going to start with just some quick housekeeping items. The first two items, first item on the agenda is approving meeting minutes from our previous meeting. And that is actually both from the June 8th and the June 29th meetings.
Motion to approve June 8th and June 29th meeting minutes.
Second.
I actually have 3 quick typos, Linda, and I apologize for not sending them in advance. I literally just read the minutes.
Okay.
But I can enumerate them for you. On the June 8th minutes, page 5. It's sorry to make you do this.
No, that's okay.
It says year and the word should be here. It's just a typo.
Got it.
It's down in the written part, I believe, down the bottom. You were almost there. Going in that third line there, worry that we are going to do all of this work as a building committee here instead of year.
I got you.
And then the other 2 are in the minutes from the June 29th meeting.
So it's actually this.
Correct.
All right, thank you. And then on the 29.
Again, just 2 minor typos. On page 2, I was talking about what Terry Kwan had said. And it said, so the notes here, if you go down to where it starts because basically it would be putting, do you see that line? 1, 2, 3, 4 down, yeah. Because basically it would be putting good money after bad instead of new. There you go.
I can't roll with it.
And then on page 4, okay. See the paragraph that starts Diane Kelly. I completely agree with you, Chris, that part. In the next line down, community planning, that it would be usable by the community. Oh, sorry, that is correct. I take it back. That's not, I was thinking it was supposed to say community center to be a community center, but I retract my complaint.
Okay, right. I will save these so that I can correct these for posting on the website, etc. Are we good with approving them with these two notes today, or?
Yeah, I'll make that friendly amendment to Mrs. Rizzo's motion that we approve the minutes with those two corrections.
Okay, perfect. So then I will go and do the roll call for approval of both sets of meeting minutes, starting with Mike Picardi,
Yes.
Mayor Keith,
Yes.
Stacy Rizzo,
yes,
Susan Gravellisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes,
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
Joanne McKenna,
Yes.
Rich Viscay,
Present.
Nick Rystrom,
Yes.
and others are absent. Okay, great, thank you. Going back to our agenda, we have we have it written as a schedule and budget update, but it is tied to approving June invoices for processing from left field and Perkins Eastman.
And
So
Linda,
I
I'll
will-
hit the schedule after we go through the budget stuff, if that's okay.
Perfect. More natural order. Got it. All right, so I'm going to start by sharing the update to the current feasibility budget, just making sure that everybody can see this. Trying to, there we go.
there we go.
We go. Are these numbers large enough to be legible, or?
Yes,
Okay, perfect. So this is as of June 30th, 2023. With the amended contracts, we have a total budget of $4,300,000, which we have committed 93.7% to that amount. We still have some holds in environmental and other. And to date, we have spent 56.9% of that budget, which is the $2,447,636. So with these two invoices that we're looking for approval on for left field and Perkins Eastman, those are included in this number. So we're at 56.9% as of June 30th. So the invoices that we will be looking to process is for June, and it will be left fields invoice number 29 for June services in the amount of $21,000. And then there'll also be Perkins Eastman invoice number 28 for services for June 1st through the 30th in the amount of $107,986.32.
I'll make a motion to pay the left field June invoice number 29 in the amount of $21,000.
second,
I think that was a unanimous. I'll give this one to Susan. All right, and I will do a roll call for approving left field's invoice in the amount of 21,000, starting with Mike Picardi,
Yes.
and Mayor Keith,
Yes.
Stacy Rizzo,
yes,
Susan Gravellisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes,
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
Ms. McKenna.
Yes.
Ah, there you are. Rich Viscay,
Yes.
Nick Rystrom.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then we will do, look for another motion for Perkins Eastman's invoice in the amount of $107,986.32.
Motion to approve the 107,000 plus.
Second,
Second, okay, thank you. Roll call, Mike McCarty,
Yes.
Mayor Key,
Yes.
Stacy Rizzo,
Yes,
Susan Gravellisi. We lose Susan?
I think we did lose her.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Ah,
Sorry.
just in time.
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Kelly,
Yes,
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
Diane McKenna.
It's Joanne.
and Joe.
That's all right. I've been told worse.
I'm so sorry. Joanne McKenna, pardon me.
Yes.
Rich Biscay
Yes.
and Nick Rystrom.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And going back to our agenda, that is all the incredibly exciting housekeeping we have to go through today. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian.
Thank you, Linda. So I wanted to just give a quick schedule update here before we get into the main event, the design update for tonight. I'm going to put on the screen the schedule that we've looked at a few times here and that we're progressing through so far. Everything here is holding. One quick note I'll make is that I've spoken with Councilor McKenna, and we are the project is on the agenda for Monday's city council meeting. The intent of the meeting for Monday is mostly to run through this schedule. I'll spend a little bit more time on this schedule with the city council than we will tonight, because this committee's seen this before, and then give the city council a flavor of where the updates have gone based on tonight's meeting, and probably bring up some of the draft slides, get their questions. But I anticipate from here on out being at the city council pretty much once a month for updates. That's just a side note, but everything in yellow, highlighted in yellow on the screen, all of these cells here is all stuff that's underway. Still site analysis, building design analysis. You'll see a lot of the fruits of that progress tonight, and that'll continue. We're sort of in this green bar here, update options and present progress, which we sort of had running for this month, and it's going to be running through the beginning of September. You will note that Linda sent out meetings, Zoom invites for the duration of these meetings, and based on some discussions this week, we decided that we really do need 2 meetings next month. So there is a meeting on your calendar for the 10th of next month and the 24th. The 10th is going to focus on updates related to permitting, Article 97 land disposition, and updates on the culvert. We're a good deal of the way through talking with a number of people on those topics, and I'm hoping by the time we're on the 10th and presenting it to you, we actually have some good updates about those items. I think culvert, Article 97 seem to be heading in not the worst case scenario direction, but we need a little more time to work that out. So the 10th of next month, we'll focus on those sort of permitting, site, culvert related items. The 24th will be a more design centric update based on where the discussion on the design option goes tonight. Just as a sort of reminder going forward, we want to, by the meeting after 9/7, any options that are still alive at that point, we're going to pull into the estimating process. So we have 3 meetings to go through tonight's meeting, 2 meetings in August to continue. Any options that are still on the table ultimately are going to be issued to the estimators. That's when all of the numbers are going to be put back into the equation here. It's something I want to explain to the city council as well, that we aren't dealing with new estimates yet. We need to get more on paper, and we need to understand more about the site. But estimating is going to run through the second, third, and fourth week of September into October. And we're really holding the date of looking to get final presentations of here are the remaining options. Here's a schedule for each option. Here's a budget for each option, pluses and minuses for each option, issued to all committees by 10/20. And that sets up these proposed meetings down here, which dates might vary by a day or two, but we're looking to present all that final information to the school committee, school building committee, city council early November. We're looking for mid-November for and into later November for a decision to be made on which option to proceed with. Throughout the September and October, we'll be compiling everything we're going to talk about at all these meetings into a report. We'll be issuing that report before Thanksgiving, and then looking at the end of November or into the beginning of December for a final blessing on the report's good to submit to the MSBA. That then sets up moving into schematic design through the winter and into the fall. All leads back towards the planned July return to a debt authorization vote here. So right now, we still have the below this black line as more gets into post-project approval schedule. Right now, we still have this rigged up, assuming that the project might need to replace parkland in advance of the building. I'm hoping in the next month or two, we have a better understanding of that and we can definitively tell you whether that needs to happen or not. Right now, this schedule is rigged up for the worst case scenario, which would be park replacement starting first. Right now, we're looking at spring 2025, getting that any replacement parks, if they're required by the state in the Article 97 process, online by fall 2025, which allows us to start putting a shovel in the ground at the end of 2025 for the building once we clear the way. So as you can see, if we do sort of win some battles, might be the wrong way to put it, but win some battles in the Article 97 and permitting process, this could improve a little bit. If we don't have to replace fields in advance, we could potentially get shovels in the ground at the high school site building the building in spring of 2025. So nothing on the bottom part of this schedule has changed since you last saw it. I just wanted to sort of give a quick run through it so the committee understands it's going to be the bulk of what we're going through with the city council on Monday.
Brian, I had mentioned last month on the timing that we should be cognizant of the election that's happening on November 4th, I believe it is.
Yep.
So I'm just noticing these meetings that you have with the school committee and the school building committee on the 2nd, and then with the city council on the 6th. That might need some rethinking.
Yep.
They're all going to be incredibly busy that whole week.
Yep. I'm just making a note for myself in this, and I will, I think we'll spend some of the meetings, Dr. Kelly, that we have with the acting mayor and some of the folks. And I think it's something I'll talk to Councilor McKenna and some of the other councilors about, of if we need to tweak these dates, we can tweak them. We're really trying to, the only hard date here is getting the schematic design submitted to MSBA next spring. This is these are the dates that really have to be held based on the extension we got, but things back in here can shuffle around as needed.
Okay.
Good point,
This is
though.
Diane's favorite type of meeting, so.
Any schedule or process related questions? And I do want to say, as we get deeper into permitting, that's when we'll talk a little more about community outreach, meetings along those lines, et cetera. I view that as a lot related to the permitting process. So I think that's something we'll cover in a little more detail. Right now, those aren't in here, but we'll start infilling this schedule with other dates if those sort of activities come up.
Brian, can I say something, please? So November, we have a scheduled meeting, the 13th of November and the 27th of November.
13th and 27th. Let me just.
23rd, I have the meetings for the next 4 months. So if you want, I can.
Yeah, if you could email that over, that'd be great. And I might play with the schedule a little bit even before Monday and try to get that into alignment. And we'll make it all work.
Okay.
Brian, I had one other scheduling question. I was talking to Gianni today about, we were continuing with that environmental work that was happening at Wonderland. Is that correct?
I believe so. And I wasn't able to catch up with the director of the Conservation Commission. I believe it's going to be on the agenda to try to close out that ANRAD wetlands delineation process at their next meeting. But yes, my understanding is that we want to drive that to a close. So the city has a determination on where those wetlands are and whose jurisdiction they're under for the next 3 years.
Okay, and so should that be reflected in the schedule somewhere?
Yeah, we can add that in. I'm gonna just put a bunch of notes to myself in this cell. Okay. I will incorporate that.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions, I think we proceed with the green line here. More updates, design updates, site updates. I know the design team, both from an architecture and landscape point of view, have done a lot of work, and we're hoping to sort of get into some of these options. I'm not telling the committee that anything tonight or at the next meeting has to be eliminated, doesn't have to be eliminated, but I do think that if we can, in these next 2 to 3 meetings, get ourselves down to what we think the best few options are, we'll be able to do a more detailed estimating process if we're carrying a few options as opposed to 6 or 7. So I just wanted to throw that out there, but we can make do with whatever is needed.
Hey, Brian, it's Patrick Keefe.
Yes.
I just wanted to kind of reiterate, and I know that you and I were in the meeting together with, I believe, Diane Kelly, just to kind of talk about the overview on what we're hoping to keep from a budgetary standpoint as a whole. And I just wanted to know if that would be a good opportunity to kind of bring that up here tonight with just kind of as we're, planning and preparing for materials and design work.
Sure. And if you don't mind me sort of recapping my understanding, just to make sure I get it right, Patrick, as we understand it, the city would like the project to work towards the $300 million local share. And by local share, that's total project minus projected MSBA reimbursement. I think especially if we get good news in not having to replace a park in advance, and depending on how the culvert shakes out, we could be in good shape there. But
Can we let the mayor, the acting mayor speak on it, Brian?
go for it. Yeah.
Sure. Well, thank you, Diane, Dr. Kelly, and thank you, Mr. Dakin. So yes, ultimately, kind of falling in line with what we were getting close to before. Unfortunately, I think that the numbers were too scary, and it definitely turned some people away from the project. So just wanting to work from a number standpoint first before we throw a design and a number out there that's off-putting. So $300 million local share, which I think everyone understands, is that's after the MSBA reimburses potentially $170 or $180 million, maybe hopefully more, but trying to work underneath that number so that it's more palatable and we don't come into this hurdle down the road where everyone's at a standstill. So that's really the crux of it. And also, as mentioned, and you know this, and please, if there's any architects or designers on the call, please take this with a grain of salt. Sometimes if you just give someone a blank checkbook and say, design me a home, and you don't tell them you need to stay within a certain median range, it can get a little dicey. So we're just trying to give you a number to design within and see if that works, because we really didn't do that the last time. So I think that this will be more beneficial.
Understood.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Any other budget schedule questions, or should we move into design update? I think it's your show, Don.
Thank you, Brian. And thank you, Acting Mayor. We heard you loud and clear. So hello, everyone. Tonight, I have my whole Perkins Eastman team with me. Have been doing a lot of design updates. I also have Warner Larson and Associates team, and in particular, David Warner, who will be talking through some of the site, both existing conditions, constraints, as well as some ideas to go alongside of some of our options. So what I'm going to do is show you, recap where we were after the last meeting, just in case anyone forgot, show you some of what we've been doing in the meantime, let David talk through some of the site information, then I'll recap where we are and kind of ask for any input. So just so you know, that's what we're planning on doing. With that, I am going to share my screen. Hopefully I'm able to, Linda, maybe, yeah.
Yep, it came up.
Okay, awesome. And David will need to as well. I think he's going to want the ability to zoom in on his. So just so you know, let me see. Let me go to screen. Okay. So we already went through the agenda, design update, building options. So if you remember, I don't know, was it 3 or 4 weeks ago now? We kind of ended with a bunch of options, and actually you took a few off the table. So those aren't showing here tonight. Those were the existing field house to be renovated options, decided that that probably wasn't worth pursuing. So those will not appear anymore. What we're left with are kind of on the left-hand side, top to bottom, the 2 6-story of the original 4 that we showed you, the H scheme, which is probably closest to the footprint and design of the Wonderland, the previous SD design that was done. We kind of took that and tried to make it fit on this site, which is obviously has more constraints. So we had to go taller. From there, we still have the triangle, which seemed to be a little bit of interest in. Again, that was a 6-story, 10-12 academic wing, a 4-story freshman academy wing, and then a heart of the school gym and auditorium. So from those last time, we showed you some alternates on that. The H scheme had an alternate that we tried to shorten in height the 6-story piece of the H scheme and take a couple stories, put it over the gym. I'll give you an update on that in a moment. And then also the triangle, and try to make the 6-story longer in order to accommodate the program that needs to be in the building, and have it not be quite so tall. And then we had the campus options, freshman academy across the culvert and performing arts across the culvert. So from there, we are the H and the triangle is still the same. We haven't necessarily done anything new with that. Those are what they are. We understand that there's a divide. Some people are really not happy with 6 stories. Some people think it maybe isn't so bad, but we're leaving it there because we may, I don't know if we'll end up there with some of the site constraints. So those still exist. The alternate on the H scheme, where we tried to take a couple of stories and put it over the gym, the more we dove into the program and saw how it divides, and it has these kind of sprawling wings, and the gym being the second story with those above it, it actually didn't make that piece of the building any shorter. So it's our recommendation that that one not be pursued. We didn't like it programmatically. We didn't like what it did educationally. And it also has a very long sprawling footprint. So if that was anyone's favorite, speak now. I'm not sure that it was. And the more we dove into the program aspects of it, we didn't love it. So we would recommend that not be pursued. So that's why it's grayed out here. We did look at the triangle alternate one, which lengthened the 10-12 wing, and also the performing arts campus in much more detail, and I'll get to those in a moment. The freshman academy, we felt like that one had less desire to pursue, and that the performing arts center across from the culvert, if we were going to separate out a piece of the building and build across the culvert, that it was preferred that it be the performing arts. So with that, we dove deeper into these 2 options, and I'll go into the triangle alternate one first. So what you see here, and you'll see these for all the options I showed tonight, we've got a first floor plan which identifies kind of the major pieces of the building, how it sits within the context of the site. And then they all have these sort of contextual sketches that help us think about what the outside space, how it connects to the building, and thinking about it from a campus standpoint. So Diane, I hope those are helpful to have you start to, and I know it's more than just you, but you've been very vocal about it wanting to really feel like a campus and be a place that's more than just a building on a site, but a place that the students will learn both inside and out. So all of them have those sketches. And then for what it's worth, we put some design considerations. This starts to highlight kind of the heights, the, how many stories each of them are. The gym, is it on the second floor, first floor? Is it near the fields? Is it far from the fields? And then some of the other aspects of the design. So in the triangle, we're suggesting a south facing main entry. David Warner will get into some of the site options for this, but this is more footprint than the 6-story, but less than the 4. So we kind of took a hybrid, and I'll show you in a moment the upper floors. But what this does is still has an east-west facing academic wing. So this is 10-12. And this is actually this one piece, and this one piece only is 5 stories. The rest of it is 4 or less. So we have a 4-story heart of the school and 4-story freshman academy, which is above this tech space that feeds into the heart of the school. We're also studying, and we're not there yet, but we hope we might be able to work. And actually, this was a collaboration with Left Field giving us feedback on some of our designs that could we build up to, since the gym is above the lockers still in this case, and we have options where it's not. But in this case, it's at the 2nd floor, but could we get a community entry or an entry off the west that takes you into that level? So you come in at the gym level. And that was really interesting and something we're studying from a site perspective, because we do have so many constraints here. And I'll show you some precedents of things that might help us get there. So with that, we have a 2nd floor, 3rd floor, 4th floor. Like I said, 4 stories of the heart of the school and the freshman academy. And then just the piece of the building that's at the Route 60 face is a 5-story in order to accommodate all the program and not have to lengthen that academic wing, because you'll see when David gets to his piece, there's some constraints to the north. And then when you come to the south, it starts to eat away at some of the valuable land that we're trying to use from a site circulation standpoint. So this could be that 2nd-story entry that takes you into the gym, the balcony level of the auditorium, as well as this is where the freshman academy starts. So this is 1st floor of the freshman academy with their cafeteria, and the 2nd floor of the 10-12. And then above it, we've got media center and more academics. Same with 4th, some of these more dynamic spaces feeding off the heart of the school, and then the partial 5th floor. And these are exterior light wells. I'm going to go back to the sketch real quick and move my thing. But these, we're hoping we might be able to get some planting, natural daylight, and get, some good daylighting into some of these classrooms that feed off of it. I know that was quick, but this is basically a further evolution or an iteration of the triangle alternate 1 in order to shorten this bar, because previously when we made it 4 stories, it had to come out pretty far. We're actually trying to use some of that for site circulation, and David will speak a little bit to that. We decided that could we go hybrid and do a 5th floor, but only there. So maybe not ideal, but we think that with some of the site constraints, we may be forced to end up with a hybrid, because, a 4-story and a 5th story because of some of the site constraints. So that's a view from the north. This is a view looking south. You can see the heart of the school, how the gym is close to the fields. We've got the 5 stories here along the major roadway, and then the auditorium still adjacent and directly across from RMA, and the freshman academy is over near the front entry. We still do show the district admin here. I think that's a conversation for another day. Could it be part of this building? Yes. Would it increase the footprint? Yes. So, but maybe it's not ideal as a standalone building over here. So we've talked quite a bit with Left Field about this and have some ideas about it. So for now, I'm showing it because I don't want to lose track of it, but it may have to be brought into the main building. Does anyone have any questions on that? I know I went through it quickly, but there's a lot of site information we want to cover. This isn't dramatically different than what you saw last time with the 4-story. It just takes this one up to 5 in order to accommodate all the program. And alongside of the presentation that was shared right before the meeting, there's a packet of each floor plan for each of the options I'm showing tonight. So if you want to dive deeper or look closer, and if you have any questions through left field, feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to either sit down and explain or talk you through some of the program. And that's the case with any of these. No questions?
I would like to toss one quick thing out there, and
Sure,
it's
Brian.
typical to a handful of these options. It's something that I think needs some more follow-up discussion with Dr. Kelly, with the city, et cetera. But you'll see in a lot of these options, we're still showing a district admin building out in the parking lot. And from a cost and phasing point of view, that's never going to be ideal. There's definitely going to be a premium for having to build over there. So I'd just like to have some discussions in the coming month of should that stay out there? Should it be incorporated into the main building massing, or could it potentially end up offsite somewhere? So it's just a preview for when we get into cost items. It's going to be a pretty big cost driver if we have to take away existing parking, put it somewhere else, et cetera. So I just wanted to bookmark that with folks.
If we know it's gonna be cost saving, why don't we take it out now?
The city would just have to decide where it needs to go, I suppose.
Roger.
And if that,
Brian, the other thing with that is the district admin building, the new building wouldn't really be needed until the existing building is taken down.
That's correct.
So there could be some flexibility there.
agreed. It might not really trying to keep from taking over Ambrose Park and the baseball diamond up off the bottom right of the screen is my goal. That's what your cost driver is going to be. So if we can get creative on how to phase it, it might not be a massive premium. But if we wanted it to open, on day one, that means we're going to have to be taking that parking lot away while the existing high school is still functioning.
What kind of square footage are we talking for district administration building?
John, do you have that number?
I looked at it the other day and now I
I
forgot.
can try to, I'll
feel
look it
like
up as Dawn's proceeding
it's
and
a few
I'll,
thousand. Yeah, it's maybe 4,000 or 5,000. I forget. I
I
definitely
mean, I
looked
find
it
it
up
hard
the
to
other
believe that
day.
we can't find 4,000 or 5,000 square feet for district administration, and I think we should look to eliminate that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, Brian, if you wouldn't mind, if you have a space
I'll
template,
go hunt
yeah,
around.
that'd
Yep.
be awesome, because I'm gonna plan on keep going. But that's a good question, and I literally just saw the number the other day and now I've forgotten. But I had the same thought. I was like, could it go in the building? It's just, it wants to be accessible, meaning it wants to be like probably on the ground floor and easy to get to for visitors and staff and, so it probably would just create a bigger footprint. And that's the case with all of these. So that is a common denominator of all the options. We need to find a home for district admin.
And I'll just say that there are other considerations to make as well, like, because we're not going to be able to alleviate the overcrowding in the other buildings. If we have to create a space for district administration, we would like the parent information center to go with it. That's currently in the Beachmont School.
Mm.
The plan was that it would move up to the existing building if the existing building was still going to exist, because there would be room in there if that was a central middle school. But if that's coming down, we need space for them as well. So there's just a bigger discussion than to just eliminate it altogether.
Right. Right.
And
Sounds like
since
that
none of
needs to be.
since none of that is MSBA reimbursable, it's all on the city bill.
That's right. So it can be the size that you need it to. It's just 100% on, the city of Revere to pay for, but that's
Even
always the case.
even more of a reason to really start to consider alternatives.
Okay. So that's kind of a preview of some of what we've talked about with, in regards to that, because that is a problem. Once we take down the existing building, Diane and her staff and that whole cluster of program spaces needs a home.
The
So-
business
and-
office, the special education office, all of it.
There's
yeah.
a lot there, Diane. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
And the one other thing that I wanted to mention is we had talked about, and I know this is like early design process, all the problems aren't going to be solved right now. But I
Mhm.
just wanted to flag again, the idea of not having separate locker rooms beneath the gym because of supervision problems that would create.
Yeah, so I would love to get a meeting sooner than later to figure out what you actually need then for locker spaces. We've
Yeah.
been holding what was previously determined when we did user meetings alongside of what the MSBA gives you for space. But if it is something that where I think I heard in a previous meeting that someone said, you know, they're not really used that much and you have more than you need. And hopefully that's my understanding of what I thought I heard. Then if we are able to right size those and get them on the same level as the gym, that would be amazing. And I'd love to know sooner than later, Diane.
Yeah.
So if we can, through you and left field, set up a meeting with your athletic director, that would be awesome. And whoever else needs to be in the room.
Yeah.
Right? It's not-
Bowen.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. Great. So let's move on to the campus performing arts center. This hasn't so much changed from what you previously saw. We just confirmed program, and all of these are real size, real program. And this is where I'm saying these are the locker and team rooms that were determined, Diane, and they're substantial in size because of the student body. So if there's an opportunity to right size those or to take some of them down and have a better understanding of the use of space, and especially with regards to team rooms, because some of your fields are not here, right? So understanding who uses what team rooms and when, that would be helpful, because it may be that what we heard previously either has changed or is different. So with this, we have a 2-story heart of the school, 4-story academic wing. What's nice about this, and I said this hasn't changed since last time, both these academic wings are still 4-story. What's creating the large footprint is, in this case, the gym is on the main level. So you can see the gym is here alongside the multipurpose gym and junior ROTC, as well as the locker and team rooms and some, storage and those type spaces for the gymnasium. So this creates quite a pretty big footprint, right? But that connects directly to 10-12 Freshman Academy is above the tech. The tech feeds into the heart of the school, which is only a couple stories tall. And that Freshman Academy is 4 total stories, including the tech. So 3 above this, 4 here. So you can see the upper floors here. We've got media, art, and some tech off the heart of the school, and then mainly the academics and art and tech on the north side. So this is the only full 4-story option. What's nice here, I didn't get into it, but this courtyard that's created by the kind of 3 sides of the academic wings that are embracing it, it can really be this sort of oasis in the city of Revere. And I see it as like a quiet learning space. And there could be an opportunity. What we're showing here is a safe pedestrian zone. And we talked about this at the last meeting. In order for students to traverse the site safely, that this would be basically vehicle free, with the exception of emergency vehicles when needed, but a way for students to get back and forth safely without having to cross any roadways on campus. So with that, we imagine that you could come up and around into the learning courtyard. So again, just sort of creating this campus feel from the site and the grade into the building and then back out into the learning courtyard. So we thought this was quite nice. The downside is the expense and the phasing of building a separate building for the performing arts. So it's auditorium, music to the north, district admin is tucked in there, and would have a separate entrance. So these are the upper floors. And again, in the packet that came alongside this, these are enlarged and you can kind of look closer at them. And then here's the massing on that. You've got the gym. The locker rooms are adjacent to it. We've got these, actually, this is, I believe, 3 stories, and then 4 is this larger L that comes up against Rumney Marsh and the highway. And then we have the auditorium and district admin here across the culvert. And here's looking south. Any questions on that? Nothing. Okay, cool. We'll keep going then. So we're going to introduce something new. We kind of suggested you take the H alternative one off. Programmatically was not ideal. We didn't love what it was doing because it was really separating the academics and putting one over, you know, the gym space, and that's probably not ideal. But what we did look at as we were forming the Performing Arts Center campus was, wow, there's this kind of a nice plan. It embraces this learning courtyard. It creates this community feel for all the students and the center heart of the school. But the downside is it has separate building across the culvert. So could you, and here's where we need to have a better understanding of the lockers and team rooms, Diane, but if we put the gym back up at the second floor above the lockers and brought the auditorium, the Performing Arts Center, back into the main building, those would connect directly off the heart of the school and then have pretty much all academics that, you know, embrace that learning courtyard. So the downside is the gym went back up, but the positive is the auditorium came over. And with that, we did have to do a partial fifth floor, again, like the triangle alt one, just at the east facing along the highway wing. But then the other wings are only 4 stories to the north, and the south one is only 3 stories. So they, again, here's the heart of the school. We've got art to the north. We've got tech feeding off the heart of the school. And then we have kind of this embrace of academics around this learning courtyard. All these classrooms get natural daylight directly outside. We feel like there's a good synergy with some of the tech spaces, and I didn't get into it here, but we've got community health, we've got Coast Collaborative, we've got culinary right off the learning courtyard. There's a lot of details here that we could get into, but we're trying to liven up that heart of the school as well as connect to the outdoors. So we thought this was kind of the best of both worlds with the triangle and the Performing Arts campus, and create one holistic building that has all the program in it, not having to build on the other side of the culvert. The downside is that the gym had to go back up, so it does get taller. It is still close to the fields, but this is it from a massing standpoint.
Hey, Dawn, sorry, this is.
Yes.
everyone.
Hey, Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark
Hi.
from Perkins Eastman. I just wanted to chime in because we talk a lot about these things. I think the one thing that's, I know there's still a challenge with the finding the space for the locker room on the same floor as the gym, but this scheme does do a much better job about natural light. And the first scheme is a lot of advantages to it being so compact, but one of the disadvantages, we're really challenge to kind of create these little courtyards to try to get natural light down deeper in the building. This one does do a nice job of that. That courtyard, it's hard to tell. It's a big site. That courtyard is a pretty good size. And as Dawn said, it's lower to the south. We think it would be a pretty successful space.
Thank you, Mark.
Sure.
Yeah,
No problem.
all great points. Our teams talked a lot about this because we were like, oh, well, you know, as plans evolve, we were like, oh, this one's kind of got some merit. Should we show it as an additional alternative? So
the lighting is really important. I mean, the more people study it, the more we understand the impact it has on learning. So
yeah,
it's appreciated.
yeah. And that's, you know, architecturally, is you can't move a building once you put it somewhere. So we're always at this phase thinking about daylight, learning spaces, and, you know, controlling some of the daylight as it comes into the building, because it is so influential on student learning and student comfort too. So I'll be quick and turn it over to David. From there, this is just a sketch that we had shared from a site circulation. So just so you get a glimpse into our process, this is like, we took this courtyard scheme and made notes for David Warner and his team and said, hey, what do you think about this? Because we're always thinking about, how do you drop students off? Where do they enter the building? How do you make connections from indoor to outdoor? What are some of the constraints, right? So this is just a sketch that we did, some consideration, and David will get into some of his graphics and what he took from this with some of the constraints that we have. And then lastly, we just want to share, these are the 3 sketches you saw sort of creating a campus feel. And as we're thinking about, could you get an entry into the second floor, sort of a more public entry, something that is accessible and a nice experience as you come into the building? We're always looking for reference images and precedents. And this is a high school that is in Sydney, Australia, I believe. But what it does nicely is kind of blurs the line between what is at grade and how you enter the building. Clearly, this is an elevated building, even so much that they have this large stair that takes you up to the roof over their gymnasium. But there's this whole experience of kind of making your way up. And it's not just like, boom, set of concrete stairs, that's how you get into the school. That's not the experience we want to create. We want to create a natural forming experience that allows students to enter at different points in the building or the community, frankly, anyone that's entering the building to feel like they're part of the landscape and have that line blurred between the architecture and the landscape design. So these are the 3 sketches. This was sort of the, the imagery that we were imagining as these sketches were done. And then to just show the built product, obviously they had fewer trees than they imagined, but still a nice experience. And then how that connection moves its way inside, and the language is similar, the natural feeling, that is some of the hope. We want to give you like images because I'm such a visual person. I like to show what we're thinking. And so when we say, oh, you have this, entry that could take you into the second floor, or how does one enter in as, to get to some of these public spaces in the heart of the school, these are the sort of things we're imagining. So hope that's helpful as we're, talking nuts and bolts and constraints of site. It's sometimes helpful to imagine some of the possibilities. So with that, if anyone has any questions before I turn over to David.
Dawn, I can follow up on the, so the net square footage for district admin is 6,500 square feet. Net is if you put up a tape measure drywall to drywall, just the room. So a 6,500 square foot net program probably means a 9,000 to 10,000 square foot building.
Yeah, gross.
And if you could just go 3 back to the nice hand sketch, I think there was a good point on that I can close out this.
Sure.
One more.
Oh, one more.
Sorry.
Oh, this sketch.
Here.
This was done on my iPad, by the way.
No, this is great because it reminded me. You'll see that in the bottom middle, right around where Janvrin Ave, the yellow triangle curves in, there's a property that says "buy" with a question mark. We have heard through the grape that's what I'm gonna, with all due respect to the person that owns it, I'm gonna call it the junkyard. That person might want to sell. That could become a discussion with the city, with the school about if that property were purchased. That might be a great spot to put admin, or somewhere along. There's another commercial building out on the highway there that's not residential, wouldn't displace residents. So we're gonna work those angles, and that could be more cost feasible than potentially building in the parking lot and having to sort of waste money. I say waste money because you're not getting a permanent benefit to build temp parking elsewhere. So we'd probably be talking about 9,000-10,000 square foot building outside dimensions to house that. And we're going to try to hunt down, could it go somewhere else? In addition to the city and Dr. Kelly having discussions about could it go other buildings, et cetera, in the city. Yep,
great point. And I forgot that was on there. But you had mentioned it in a meeting, and it could be valuable land. We're talking, it's out of the, like, I think there's things about it that we were like, oh, it's kind of, that could be like a good piece of property if they were willing to sell. So
we'll be following up on that, but yeah, that's all I wanted to know.
Keep us posted, Brian. Okay, great. So if there are no other questions, I'm going to stop sharing because I believe David would like to share and go through some of the site opportunities and reminders about the constraints. So David, feel free to introduce yourself. And I think everyone remembers you, but it's been a while, so.
Yeah. Thank you, Dawn, and good to see you all again. I'm David Warner, president of Warner Larson Landscape Architects. Got a couple other people on the call from our office, Samir Boite and Tom Mosley. I'm going to be taking a little bit of a broader perspective to start off. Obviously, the constraints are things that we all need to be very aware of. They are real, and we're getting more and more detail on them, as Brian was pointing out. The ongoing due diligence of the survey work, the culvert work, and as well as the Article 97 is starting to feed us information that's more specific and more detailed than what we've had from GIS and record drawings. With that, though, the caveat and the diagrams that you're seeing tonight are still based upon the GIS information, which is good, but it's a little imprecise. So they are diagrams that are helping to frame the constraints that will become more definitive when we get the detailed survey, for instance. But one of the interesting things in the research that's gone on relative to Article 97 is we've gotten our hands on the subdivision plan that was created before Rumney Marsh, the RMA was constructed. And there's an internal boundary that was created here, as well as a triple culvert that was put in this elbow that you see right here. Everybody can see my screen, right? And the arrow, okay?
Yep.
And so this internal boundary is not a constraint as we know it. I think it's just part of what is Article 97 perhaps, but it was interesting because it follows the veterans baseball field very closely, and clearly that was the delineation of that line. Those plans also recorded the some of the contaminated soils that were capped, this activity use limitation. There is one mound down here that everybody's seen that landform. That's what that is. It's recorded, and it's something that is within the way of what we are talking about developing. And it's not a constraint per se, it's just a cost to be able to deal with that, to clear the site and make that site usable. The other thing that I wanted to point out relative to this culvert is you know, we've mapped it out based on GIS information. There is a report that CDM Smith had produced that is, you know, GIS based. And we show that line coming through the site right here from School Street all the way across to American Legion Highway where it crosses. And that we understand, you know, is a real constraint, as well as what we've been advised by the engineers is to plan on keeping the building footprint at least 30 feet off the center line of that line. So that's what this blue shaded zone represents. It's an offset from the center line of the pipe. The other thing that we wanted to point out is just the general lay of the land that everybody's very familiar with, but I'll just point out some key spot elevations here because they're going to play into the elevations that we're starting to look at in terms of setting the finished floor for the new building and the parking, at-grade parking beneath it. Your existing school, high school, is really close to 11.25 elevation. And the RMA is at elevation 11. And the existing site in this vicinity slopes from elevation 11 down to a low point here, right around 6. The lowest point is right at the end of Janvrin Avenue at 5.5. And then American Legion Highway is very high in this corner. It's sloping up, as you all know, as you go towards the circle at elevation 15, and then sloping back down to kind of a low point here where there are a couple of catch basins at elevation 9. So that is a segue into the next slide, which this is superimposing the outline of the current FEMA map from 2016 that delineates the AE zone at elevation 11. So the other thing too that we've picked up from our site visits, and it's also seen in some of the record drawings, that the power coming in from this corner of the site, we've got you know, the main electricity coming in, I believe feeding the high school is coming in at this point, and it's really quite a constraint in terms of, you know, the access. Right now you've got that paved walkway that comes along here that serves for a good pedestrian bicycle connection, also emergency access potentially, but the intersection over here is something that we've reviewed this with VHB, the traffic consultant on this project, and it's a really tight configuration with that commercial property that I think maybe Brian was referring to earlier, you know, and it's corner of Harris and American Legion Highway as really being prohibitive in terms of improving that for a vehicle access for the new school. So then what I want to move on to is talking about, sorry, that went too far. The circulation patterns as far as buses, cars, pedestrians, and bicycles. I just mentioned, that this pathway along the south side of the site does serve as a pretty good connection for pedestrians, potentially bicyclists as well, although it doesn't really connect to a good network on the other side, along American Legion Highway at this point in time. Buses and cars, we know, commingle, and your major pinch point between the school building and the property line is one of the biggest traffic issues on the site right now. Some cars can peel off back out to School Street there, but most of them come around through the site and either exit out Cary Avenue or go through the parking lot. I think the True Street is also a road that is used to some extent, but the end of True Street up by where School Street and Broadway meet is a really bad intersection as far as relying on True Street for any more traffic than it currently handles. We're also aware that from our meetings on this project with staff that some of the Rumney Marsh parents, I guess, come in, and even though this is a restricted zone in terms of traffic through between RMA and the high school, that there is some use of parents, coming in and waiting for their children over here. Buses for RMA come across the front of the site and exit out to American Legion Highway. That's our understanding of the current circulation, and we want to keep that in mind as we look at the changes of putting a building in this vicinity, and how that building is best accessed. So we've developed two site diagrams rather quickly as the process is moving along in terms of updates to the building and updates to the site. So some of the things you're seeing here might not reflect all the detail that you saw in the building plans that Dawn just finished presenting. But we have two diagrams we're going to show you. One is the evolving triangle schemes, which this one is showing, and then the other one is the courtyard scheme. And I think the vision that Dawn was sharing with those images of the, I guess it's the Botanic School in Adelaide, are really quite nice in terms of getting from point A to point B through a landscape transition. I think that's really quite an exciting vision to anticipate how we can adapt that to the site. Keep in mind that the main floor of this building is going to be elevated from the surrounding conditions, and how do we make that transition, I think, is really the key. Right now, we have pegged the main floor elevation at elevation 13. It's 2 feet higher than the floor elevation at Rumney Marsh. And that would put the garage elevation at elevation 2. And the existing fields are somewhere around elevation 6, 7, and 8, transitioning up to 9, 10, 11 as you go through the parking lot. So there'd be some excavation associated with that. That would be, potentially some offset to the filling that would take place to transition up to the main floor elevation around the exterior of the building. What this diagram is representing from a building standpoint is the black outline is what is the 6-story option. And then with the red outline, we've taken that from the plan that Perkins Eastman has developed for the 5- and 4-story option that was presented this evening. And it changes the building perimeter to some extent. And that's what the red outline represents here. But bottom line is they both fit. Right. So I think that's the key message here. With regard to access, though, I think, buses continuing along from Rumney Marsh, the front of Rumney Marsh, across the site area between the building and the American Legion Highway is what we're suggesting is kind of the optimal circulation, where you're avoiding on-site crossing of traffic. And so that's what that's representing. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention previously, property line setbacks is also another constraint. That's what these orange lines represent. I'll go back to that so you can see that more clearly. And some of the early iterations of these building positioning had thought about maybe moving that building into that setback to free up a little bit more space along the west side of the building here, which is tight. As you can see, the existing parking lot right here is definitely going to be impacted a little bit by either of these building options. There may be some room to push this building back a little bit towards American Legion Highway, but as you can see, this elbow of the triple culvert is really the spatial constraint there. So clearly a work in progress. This is going to shift around a little bit more, but we had to freeze it for the purposes of tonight's presentation so you could understand the differences between these two building options relative to how they're accessed and how they function on the site. So buses circulating around, in this clockwise direction, they can exit out Cary Avenue. There's a way in which they can get around two drop-offs, either this entrance or this entrance, could either be served by either. Cars would be coming primarily from School Street, moving the intersection up to about where the exit is now, a little bit further north than where the exit is now. Coming in, hugging that property line very closely so that we could provide the space for the baseball field and the multi-sport synthetic turf field and tennis. And then looping back around and either at that point heading back out to School Street or going out True Street. There is the possibility that cars could exit out Cary Avenue, but we're not suggesting that they loop back around and do that. They might do that as they're driving through and just continue on out. The connector between RMA and the high school, we understand, is a one-way from east to west, primarily, I think, to keep major traffic cut-throughs using the school site. Anybody from the center over by Broadway and school trying to get through the site to get to American Legion Highway. And so we're showing that, continuing here. If there was a desire, I think one of the building diagrams did show a driveway in this direction. There's ways to control that, gates, that type of thing. The administration can certainly think about ways to control that so that it's not a problem. Now I'm going to go to the next diagram, which is the courtyard, and I'll be able to toggle back and forth so you can see the differences. But what this is basically doing, as you can tell, is simply, well, not simply, but it's taking the building mass and basically pushing it more towards the boundaries of the developable area in order to internalize that green space, which I think is a really beautiful space in terms of academics and outdoor learning and secure, and the way that it could potentially be accessed by kind of coming up through the building. I think those illustrations were really nice. What the major difference as we see it, though, is just what you're kind of giving up in terms of outdoor space on the exterior of the building on the south side, and what that means in terms of access and staging for construction, for instance, and outdoor spaces. I think an outdoor learning environment internal to the building certainly seems advantageous over exterior to the building. But, in terms of, let me toggle back and forth. You can see basically you're taking, this space here and pulling it inside the building. There's other considerations. Because we're coming in at 5.5 or 6, elevation 6 at the end of Jandron and elevation 13, any transition out here in this more narrow space would have more infrastructure associated with it, more ramps and walls and less broad terraces. If you have more space, then you can kind of stretch those grade changes out and make it more of a landscape gesture and then infrastructure. But I do think a lot of the illustration, the two illustrations that we saw earlier with the building, we're really looking at building up the site from the west end and coming up where you do have space, to stretch things out and terrace up. So you can get from, say, elevation 7 or 8 at this point up to elevation 13 through these more landscaped, broader terraces. And I think that's a really nice vision for this. The other thing that we wanted to point out, I don't know if anybody picked up on this, but I was speaking with Brian Dakin, and he was mentioning to me that I guess Suffolk Downs, the HIM project over there, has some pledge to provide some at-grade safe pedestrian crossing on American Legion Highway in this vicinity associated with the school and getting children safely across that road. There is a chain link fence now that goes all the way down, but I guess historically there's been real issues with students sort of jaywalking across there, taking their lives in their hands. So we're kind of picking up on that and thinking, okay, if that is going to happen and we can help influence where it happens, we could make that as part of this through pedestrian bicycle network, that connects all the way through the site over to School Street. And I think, if we're planning that early on, there's real advantages in terms of minimizing the amount of crossing conflicts. For instance, if cars come in from School Street, turn here, drop off, and then exit back out, this drive in here has a lot fewer cars associated with it, and buses are turning here. There's really a very limited crossing conflict at this point. And so people on foot or a bicycle could get all the way through the site with only that one crossing. I think is a really good thing that we should be thinking about in terms of safety. So the differences really are more in terms of site utilization, as you can see here, are really trying to use the same constraints in terms of setback from the road and obviously staying, at least 30 feet away from the culvert. And you can see there's, definitely some major differences, I guess, in terms of how much site area the perimeter of the building takes up to construct it. Both of them basically impact the same amount of parking, which is just this little corner over here. I think the transportation folks basically use that. This is where the buses park right now. And I know we haven't shown this on either of these diagrams. We recognize that another important site program element is keeping the buses on the site, parking the buses on the site. And if we're not impacting the existing parking, there's been some discussion about possibly finding that within that space north of Rumney Marsh. I don't have a visual for that, but there's a fairly large lawn area between the field itself and the building and the entrance driveway that's about the same area as where the buses park now. We still need to really think about that. That might have Article 97 implications associated with that. But if they're going to stay on site and not impact other site programs such as the fields and the courts, it's either going to be parking or it's going to be up on north of the building. I don't really see another place to put it. So just lastly, the program that we're dealing with for parking right now is still 650, same as what we were planning on over at the Wonderland site. As you could see in the previous slide, we're at 438 right now as the existing quantity on the site. But we're thinking, the parking in this area is going to be similar to the quantity that's there now, maybe a little bit less because of the changes here. So around 300 is figured in this zone. You've got another 40 or so for the fields, and then underneath the building would be the difference, somewhere between 320 to 350 underneath the building. Right now, we're just thinking somewhat dramatically how we could be accessing the garage. There's the car traffic coming through the site here, where we'd be coming into the garage potentially for a primary entrance here. This might be an exit to get back out to American Legion Highway over here. And this is just some really early thinking in terms of where access to the garage might be. So I wouldn't put too much emphasis on that. The loading and service area has been thoughtfully located within the new building to coincide very close to where the current loading is over at Rumney Marsh, so that there's plenty of turning movement for those larger vehicles to get up to a loading dock. And one of the benefits of having a raised building is you can have a nice 4-foot high loading dock without creating a ramp down to it. You're going to actually be sloping up slightly to get to a loading dock in this vicinity, and it would work out really well with those. The elevations over here are around elevation 10. So that would work out really well getting to a loading dock over here. So I know I've mentioned a lot here. We do have these two diagrams that I've just gone through. I'd really like to entertain any discussion, any thoughts, feedback.
David, I have a question.
Sure.
What is the difference? So when I look at this picture and then you show the other one, there's like the green blush around the building on this picture that's showing now. Is that green space or? So yeah, I guess the Photoshop rendering on this did basically provide that background on this image, but not on this image. I would not. Okay. So it doesn't really mean anything.
It's this all around the building, with the exception of the garage entrances and loading docks, is going to be of a pedestrian character.
Okay.
That's not a distinction between these two plans.
Okay. Because I loved the I'll use the word that Dawn taught me, the precedent of the building in Australia. But I'm just wondering if we have enough space around the building to do that same kind of green space and walkway treatment that they had on the building in Australia.
So maybe Dawn wants to go back and share images on that. I don't have that queued up in my slide, but the rendering that they had been showing was coming in on this end and basically coming in up over, I think, and having the spaces elevationally transitioning to the courtyard through this end where you have more space to do that. I think the reality is along this side of the building, the character along here is going to be a little bit more to get up to this entrance, it's going to be a little bit more of a narrow, where you're dealing with more walls and ramps and stairs to get up to that level. But where you have space to break the levels down into terraces and spread it out, that can incorporate landscape, that I think is a really beautiful vision. What we're still working with here is the kind of the push-pull between the site area and the building, extents. And this, for instance, is an iteration that is a little different than the plan they presented in order for us to make sure that we could keep Cary Ave clear for the exit. And it was in conversations with their team that they were saying, okay, well, the auditorium can turn, the gym can pull in order to allow that to happen. So it's certainly a work in progress. I think we want to focus on kind of the major differences in form and approach and what that means in terms of site utilization and also interior program. I think those are all important considerations.
Thank you.
Diane, do you want me to, let's see if anyone else has site questions, then I'll go back and answer your question about the precedent and how that was imagined. And I can show it again and just like a quick answer to your question, but I don't want to take away from David's site question. So let's see if there's any of those. And then don't let me forget to go back and tell you what.
Yeah. And I don't know that we need to go back. I've talked about this before, like the existing building, you've all seen it. It's a driveway with a chain link fence around it, and it's not a pleasant campus. And I was just hoping we would get something that would be. And the pictures we saw of the school in Australia had that sense. And when you showed that, I was like, oh, that wouldn't be bad at all. But now I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, is there really any room for that? Or are we just going to have roadways and a cement building again,
Right. David, would you go back one? That vision and that concept came from this scheme. And it's a little bit different in the scale of this is crazy small right now, Diane. Like the building is quite large. But the idea stemmed from, could you get a main entrance on the south? Will you go to that arrow, David, down between the academic? Yep, there at the lower, like I'm going to call it ground level. It's still elevated above the parking, but the ground level. And then get a higher, so it's quite high, it's 20 some odd feet up to the gym level, which is technically the second floor. And we were like, well, you can, what does it take to get there? And it's a journey of sort of terraces and accessible walkways and that to get you there. Do we have enough space to sprawl like that precedent? No. Can we take some of the concepts of how they're taking people up through, a landscape terrace with, sort of, you have stairs, you have walkways, you have different options, right? But it's a nice space to be in to get you up to that 20 plus feet. So we're still studying that with David. But the concept came from this scheme, which one has a little bit more breathing room and two has sort of a split entry or two major entries at two different floor levels. So that's where that started. But if you go to the next one, David, the courtyard, you could imagine we're still elevated here, just not at 20 something feet because we're trying to get people in, but you still have to get from grade to the main floor, the main entry. And there is enough space in that little corner there to do a smaller version of what we're showing as a precedent. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so
it
I don't
does.
want you to think you have all that real estate, but you have that concept that we can implement for our scale. So It's not just going to be a concrete building and chain link, I promise.
Yeah.
So
really is the
as we
driving-
refine this, this is our hope that we can get to sort of a couple schemes so we can dive deeper into
Mhm.
those and have blow up plans of what because you imagine the big sketches, big as in we show the whole building sketches. If you can zoom in on that front plaza area and terraced area, that will be such a nice space if you can see it for the scale that it is and how you enter into the
Hey,
building.
Hey, Dawn, sorry, it's Mark.
Yeah,
again.
Mark.
Also, these kind of drawings, the culvert is always shown graphically as if it's a physical thing, right? But it's not, right? In terms, it's, that space that is around the building and I think that we can utilize, right? So I think we need to be clever with our design, but I think we can start to look at that. We've been looking at so much at this in terms of constraints, right? But I think we need to start looking at, also these opportunities.
Yeah. And that actually, I think you just answered my next question, Mark, which was, we can't build within 30 feet of the center line of the culvert, but we could softscape those
Yes,
30 feet. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Absolutely. So that's a perfect green opportunity if we don't need
Right.
it for site circulation, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it could be a nice, safe way for middle schoolers to come over and use the auditorium or, interconnection there from a pedestrian scale. That could be really interesting. We just need to get around that loading dock area, but
Yeah.
that's feasible. So,
right.
I was just gonna add that really is the crux, Dr. Kelly, of there's a 4-story option, the partial 5s and the 6. The most basic way to think about that is the higher we go, the more relief we have on the site to create those transitions that aren't just staircases and ramps. So it's a good thing to be keeping in mind as you're looking at the 4-story scheme, the partial 5s and the 6s.
We will find the happy medium, I'm sure.
Exactly, that's the goal. Yep.
great. Good points, everyone. Any other site questions for David? Okay,
I can
it's
take
very
the screen.
much, he said it 6 times. It's a work in progress. And we're literally going back and forth on the regular with them saying, what if we did this? Or, oh, we have to move that corner of the building, or we need to slide west. So these are our kind of snapshots of our work, but even as recently as this morning, we're sort of moving the building around to work within the confines of the buildable area and also still have nice spaces around it, Diane, to your point. So
Don, I'd like to just point out that I think once we get the survey, which we're expecting pretty soon, these are also then going to have, when we have the 1 or 2 iterations, preferred options that we're narrowing it down to, we'll be able to get into a lot more detail too, in terms of, what really, that I know that everybody's more visually hungry for seeing more information, more detail, but we're basing this on GIS right now, and I think it'll be much more detailed and easy to understand when we have the survey.
great.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to share again, just for the sake of recapping the building design options. So hold on, let me maximize here. Sorry about that. I changed when David was presenting so I could see what he was doing. So back to where we were. Here's that same chart you saw. What I did was replace the H alternate 1, which we spoke about not recommending doing, with the courtyard scheme that we just talked about, and saw the site, circulation opportunities and precedent that could be in a smaller scale there. So those are the 6 we currently believe are on the table. This is a chart that still has H1, but it's grayed out because, you didn't tell us to take it off. We sort of suggested that you do. So I don't want to presume that you're on the same page as us, but if you are, then that one can go away. But what this does is those recaps, those design considerations that I spoke about, they're sort of shown here. There's a lot of information, but if you, a lot of them, they're highlighting how many stories, what's, like in the case of the triangle schemes, we're relying on light wells, exterior light wells to get daylight into the classrooms. Some of them have, learning courtyards and safe pedestrian access in the case of the two campus options. So this kind of recaps and is kind of our guide as to what is left on the table. So I don't know. I know Brian sort of opened up this up with wanting and hoping that we might be able to eliminate some. I don't know how the committee is feeling and if there's a desire to do so. But this is where you can speak up, say what you love, say what you don't love, tell us what you'd like us to look deeper into. Otherwise, we're going to keep pursuing the options here. And the ones that kind of rise to the top, similar to what we showed today, we'll be diving really deep into.
And just a few suggestions for the committee as you're thinking about this. First off, I know I'd said the August 10th meeting is going to be sort of permitting process centric, but I think we're certainly going to put this back on the screen. If folks have thoughts over the next few weeks, we can talk about it. I would suggest you to go at it in this way. First off, starting on the campus schemes, do you like or not like the idea of separating the freshman academy or the arts wing? Keeping in mind being the doom and gloom OPM, building on both sides of that culvert, I promise you is going to be more money than the other options. So that's a good place to start. Do you like that? Do you not like that? If we decide we don't like those options, I would start saying, look at the height of the building versus what it does to the site. The topic we were talking about, and Dr. Kelly, you were talking about earlier. So I think that's the best logical way to go about questioning what your preferences are. Do we want to build on both sides of the culvert? Do we want to separate the building? And then that leaves a 4-story building, a 5-story building, and a couple of 6s. And it really comes down to height versus site utilization.
And I just want to point out, apologies, I clipped out the most important piece, which is the across the culvert. I was like, do I have the right snip here?
Yep.
And you could say it's here. I cropped it out in this chart, so I'll get it back on there.
Sorry, what's cropped
Even I
out
was
of there?
questioning my own work. So the actual, so here it is. This I cropped it out. Like this part is all you see in that little chart. So don't be confused. Like see how here you can see the freshman academy and this is a smaller scale.
Yeah, but I
cropped
see
it
it in
out, so
Campus FA,
apologies.
right? Isn't that the one that has the
That's
freshman?
Yeah, the
academy?
freshman
Yeah.
academy shows it. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
PAC is the performing arts. That's
one.
what's not shown. It's
Okay,
clipped
I
off.
see.
Yep.
I don't want you to think it's the wrong one. It's just clipped out. It's right off
Okay.
the screen. So apologies. I'll fix that.
Dawn, I'm sorry to be a pain, but is there any way you could maybe just fix that tomorrow? Because this might be one of the slides I steal for a city council update.
I can fix it tonight. Yeah, I can fix it
Thank you for that. Yeah.
as soon as, Yep, no problem.
So I guess I'd ask my fellow committee members, are there any here that we think that we could eliminate right now?
Dr.
Yep.
Kelly, I have a question. How much more difficult would it be to administer a building with 6 stories? I know it's not ideal, but what are the biggest challenges of a 6-story building that you see?
So you would need to have like full administrative and security teams on 6 floors instead of 4. You would have real challenges with students with disabilities who have mobility issues, traversing among 6 floors, or face some discrimination charges if they were relegated to certain areas of the building and not allowed to access other areas of the building. So there's just a lot that goes into it. I also think of the safety concerns of trying to evacuate kids from a 6th floor if there was a problem, as opposed to evacuating a building with 4 floors.
And
Those
just
are
trying
like
to
the
get to
main-
classes on time.
Well, yeah, that too. Like it's going to be hard to get from the gym to if you have a class after gym up on the 6th floor, that's going to be a gamut. So now you're talking about lengthening the school days so that kids have more time for transitions between classes. Now you're talking contract negotiations with teachers. It gets very complicated. But my biggest concern is really the safety pieces of it and the accessibility pieces of it.
Okay,
can, sorry, I was just going to follow up on the accessibility piece and share that even in a building a fraction of this size, we've been putting 2 elevators just from a ease of use and a vertical connection, even just in a 2-story building, because the building was long and we had young students, we put 2 elevators instead of 1. And they were dispersed, right? Like not as in a bank of elevators, but dispersed so that the ease of vertical travel is available. So just want to share that there are options there that, you know, an elevator is like, you know, $100,000 or a couple $100,000, where, you know, to have that site availability is, you know, a trade-off. So just something to think about, that we can certainly make it, we can't make it less tall. If it's 6 stories, it's 6 stories, but we can certainly have availability of multiple vertical and wider stairs if needed for, you know, safety and numbers of students. So just sharing some of the, and my concern is safety and time of travel, and Stacy brought that up, just getting the kids there on time. It's a fairly large building, and I think that's the case whether they're traveling from the 6th floor to the gym or whether they're traversing, you know, the length of the H scheme from, you know, this corner of the building to this far end. So travel and time is a concern.
I mean, it would
as
seem to
well.
me that a sprawling building would take just as much time to get from one class
Yeah.
to another than a building with stairs. So I don't necessarily prescribe to that, but I mean, safety and whatnot are obviously a concern, but I just think that the cramped space really serves best to have a taller building, and there could be some efficiencies with construction, with size of roof, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not an expert on construction, but it really would behoove us to be able to build taller on that site. But again, I'm not an expert on how it would be to administer a school, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you.
So with that being said, I would like to do away with the campus path. With the
I would
step-
also do away with campus freshman academy.
Right, that one.
The 2 of them. I think that Dawn made some really good points about the separate buildings being difficult. And as Brian said, and I know this is important to Rich, it would be a lot more expensive to have a separate building. And where money is a concern, I would make a motion that we eliminate campus PAC and campus FA.
I second that.
I don't know if we still have a quorum, do we?
Uh-oh. I was just gonna say, is Linda here to call roll?
Linda is here, but I see me, Stacy, Joanne, Patrick, Rich.
We have exactly 7.
Oh, so let's finish this up before we lose someone.
Carl and Nick. And actually, I don't know that Carl is actually here. He had texted me and said he had to leave.
And I'm still here.
Yeah.
Oh, and Susan, okay. All right, so we might have enough.
I'm
Carl
back.
is showing he's still
Oh,
here,
okay,
too.
thanks, Carl.
Yeah, if we want to do a roll call to eliminate campus PAC and campus FA.
It's-
we
Can
went
I just be
through-
clear? That's the Performing Arts Center and the Freshman Academy. Just that's what those mean.
Right, they're the 2 schemes that have separate buildings,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. All right.
Okay.
So I can do-
Excluding the district admin as a standalone. Diane.
Correct, yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Correct.
do a roll call before thunder hits my house here.
Yeah.
I lose connection.
Yep.
I'm gonna start with Mike Picardi. I think he might have dropped off. I don't see him. Mayor Keith,
Here, and yes.
yes. Stacy Rizzo,
Yeah,
Susan Gravellisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes,
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
Joanne McKenna,
Yes.
Got your name right this time. Rich Viscay
Yes.
and Nick Reister.
Yes.
All right, excellent. John, we're making your life easier as we speak.
I'm smiling. Yeah. No, I mean, it just helps us focus. I have one suggestion. The triangle and the triangle alternate one are one story different, and the footprint's not overly different. I don't know if we want this didn't get updated and I apologize. So I'll do those two changes for you, Brian, because I know you want to bring this on Monday. This is the old alternate. Let me go back.
If
the
you don't mind
new-
graying out those campus ones too, we can give
Oh,
them the
yeah,
most
yeah.
up to date. Yep.
I can definitely do that for you. Yep. So same as this, like gray these out. But
Yep.
I was going to suggest that short of, I mean, we can keep the 6 on, but it feels like the 5 is kind of that happy medium that, you know, still gives us quite a bit of real estate, as you saw in David's diagram, but also not the full 6-story concern. It's one more story. I know that's still problematic and same concerns. Something to think about if you wanted to combine it and just study the 5-story maximum, which is basically the alternate one. But you tell me, I'm happy to keep them both on. They're not, you know, they're not overly different. They're just tightened, and we're finding that kind of happy medium between 6 and 5. So something to think about. Feel free to keep them both on, but if I were to, I feel like the 5 kind of, you know, alleviates a little bit of the height, but not all of it because of the site constraints, but still gives us plenty of space to circulate around and have these nice entries into the building.
Can
And
I
I think
see
it's
if I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly, Dawn?
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying there's no benefit to the 6-story triangle over the 5-story triangle alternate one?
It's a tiny bit tighter, but I mean, even in David's, he outlined the red, and I even questioned, I was like, are they really not that different? Like, because as some of I think the heart of the school tucks a little bit, pushes and pulls, where we had 6 stories, it was really a clean break. So I don't know. I feel like the 5 is kind of a nice middle ground, but that's just me. I know Brian likes the 6 and for different reasons. Like he's looking at maximizing the amount of space around the building for constructability and cost and all of that.
I do think the 5 is a good compromise to the 4 and 6. We do get a little bit more space.
I'm not comfortable eliminating the 6-story yet. I'd still like to get some, if there's an ability to talk about any kind of efficiencies or cost savings with a 6 to a 5. I mean, if it's the same difference, then maybe get rid of the 6, but I'd still like to drill down a little more and see what kind of efficiencies and cost savings that a 6-story would allow. Plus give, I do agree with Dr. Kelly. It would be nice to have something more than a fenced in brick building over there. So I think as much open space as we can salvage would be beneficial, despite the challenges of the academic of the building.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. I have no problem with it. I was just putting it out there, but you're right. I mean, there's value in the open land that, you know, both from an experience and a cost. So happy to keep the 6 on there and keep studying that one. So thank you for that.
Can I hear from other people other than Diane and Rich and myself on how they feel about 5 and 6?
I can say something to that. I mean, being an artist, I see the triangle alt 1, a better concept of, it seems like it doesn't seem like there's a difference between the 6-story max and 5-story max. And I like just the way it's lined up. I don't know, visually, it looks better in the drawing. So, but you know,
as a high school teacher, can you speak to that as well? Like, do you feel the way that I do about it?
So, you know, I was a high school teacher for 32 years and a half. And I know, working on the 3rd floor, it was difficult to get some of those disabled kids down. You know, we had to run down to the main office and make sure that people knew that we were up there, you know. So I do agree with you, Diane, but you know, I mean, the school's a 50-year-old school. I just think that with the technology and everything that's you know, come about, if we can save money on the 6-story max, you know, I think we should keep it. I think we should keep it and then just study it. But I do,
Okay.
you know, I do agree with you, Diane. I mean, I had conflict with getting those kids down. So, and we, as art teachers, we had all those kids in our classroom, you know, the special needs kids, the disabled kids. So it was really a challenge to get those kids down the stairs. So I agree with you, definitely. So.
And let's remember, we also have our staff. As much as the students are important, the staff is just as important.
I agree with that, Stacy. If I can chime in as well. And I'd like to say, I mean, I'm more of a fan and leaning towards the 5-story maximum because of the academic challenges, the children transferring back and forth from classes and the mobility challenges. So that's just my 2 cents in advocating for the 5-story max.
So it sounds like we'll keep the 6 and the 5. We'll study both, which is great. I don't know, do we need to officially vote the H alternate 1 off? Does anyone, like, process wise no, or can we just say it wasn't working from a program standpoint? I just didn't love what it was doing academically. It was separating kids that should.
Yeah, no,
otherwise be-
I think it's fine to say that, like, this is why we have you all working with us, right?
Yeah,
Because you know better than we do.
your professional opinion is valuable. So.
Okay, I didn't know if we needed an official vote. That's why I graded. I was kind of like, I don't want to
Doesn't
speak
need
for
to be.
them, but at the same time, I don't want to propose something that we don't, can't stand behind. So.
Can I just get one clarification as well? Am I
Sure.
reading this correctly, where the 6-story maximum eliminates the need for administration building?
No.
So
Well, I don't
I-
see the administration building in that small picture. I guess that's why I'm asking.
yeah, that's a
It's not.
graphic thing. It was chopped up. That's an issue with all of them. Rich, that's like, we need to solve that puzzle piece, which is, does it become part of the big building? Does it, stand alone? Which it could be in any option. Right now, it is not shown in any of the big buildings. It is shown either as a standalone, which the graphics of these don't show it, and apologies, but it would be assumed to share with the freshmen here and share with the performing arts in this one. So it's
No, I'm
for
sorry.
now.
Just to be clear, I'm talking about the 6-story maximum, which is the triangle.
Yeah.
I
it's
don't
just
see
not
that,
shown.
that one I was speaking of. Is that also need the admin building there? I just don't see that little square in the left on that schematic in that little small graphic up top.
It does need it, and I'll change the graphic to be
I
consistent.
mean,
I'll change it in all of these.
no,
So
that's
when
fine.
you get
Yeah.
this later, Brian, it'll have everything. We'll always show that so that we don't lose track of it. How does that sound? Just like this
Yep.
right here.
and I
Okay,
think
so it would be needed there. It is shown here, and it would be needed here.
and I think we got to maybe on a side conversation with Dr. Kelly is really drill down and consider all options for where we could put administrative staff, so we don't have to incur 100% liability for a separate standalone building.
Well, we could put them in the new building at Wonderland.
And the new, yeah, well, I mean, but I mean, I think we have some buildings in the city and maybe some options of, trying to figure out, even if we purchase a standalone building, there could be, it may behoove us just to buy a building on the open market to house administrators. So
Yeah.
I just think that the cost, when we look at the cost to build a standalone building with the prevailing wages and all that over there, it would be astronomical compared to even buying a commercial building on the open market or trying to repurpose something in the city. I have some ideas, but I won't get into them during this meeting.
Yeah, sounds good, Rich.
let us know if you need any input from us on that. But it's
Thank you.
definitely a puzzle piece we need to find a home for, because if it's part of the main building, then we need to know that sooner than later, because it's not insignificant in size, so.
I mean, we certainly want to maximize our reimbursement on the construction, and I know admin is not reimbursable, so that just compounds the problem.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And you're
I'm
right,
gonna be,
available.
I'm gonna mention the time because we are almost at
Yes.
7:20, and I want to be respectful of people's time. So I think just to summarize this piece, Dawn, we are gonna eliminate Campus Pack and Campus FA and leave the rest in for now.
Correct. That's my
We can
understanding.
reconsider at the next meeting.
Yep, so we'll have H, triangle, alternate 1, and courtyard still on the table.
Yep.
Love it, thank you. Okay, what's next, Brian? I'll stop sharing and I'll update this and get it over to you, Brian. If you want to share it with the bigger group, great. And I know I will make those graphic changes and get that over to you.
Appreciate it. Any other questions? If not, we'll go into a quick new business and then check for public comment. Any questions from the committee? I don't see any hands. Any new business from the committee?
Brian, just a quick question, and we can talk offline, but I'd just like to get an idea of a guesstimate of when construction date may start, just so I was going to re-engage the FAs on trying to give me some financials. Unfortunately, the news today or yesterday that they raised interest rates again does not bode well for bonding, but hopefully by the time we permanently bond, these rates will come back down. But I did want to get some new figures based upon that $300 million number if we are going public with that, and just have an idea of what the cash flow would look like and what the timeline would look like. So if we can get something like that over the next week or so, would be helpful.
Yep, you got it. I'll send you a summary.
The schedule you showed earlier, Brian, had like spring of 25. Is that right for groundbreaking?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm trying to find where it is on my screen here. Yes, spring of 2025, depending on what we're building first. Yeah, is the goal right now. Shovel in the ground.
If we
sorry,
don't
one
have
more-
to do the park replacement, right?
Yeah, right now, that's theoretically park replacement. If we don't have to replace a park, that could become building construction, and pretty much occupying the new building in August 2028.
Okay.
And sorry, I missed the last couple of meetings because of the budget season, but have we got confirmation that we are not eligible for reimbursement on the second phase of feasibility?
Yes, we have.
Okay, thank you.
Not reimbursable, correct. Yep. Okay, any other new business comments?
No.
If not, we'll do a public comment, name and address for the record, if there are any public comment. I don't see any hands. That's it. That's the end of our agenda tonight.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second,
Third.
third, fourth, bye.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you.